Hello, my name is Abdul McWhorter. I'm a consultant here at GRF CPAs and Advisors. Today we'll be talking about Acumatica ERP. We'll go over managing control accounts, also working with General Ledger transactions. In today's agenda, we'll go over 7 topics, and those 7 topics are listed here, which are managing control accounts. We'll go over processing general ledger transactions, reversing general ledger transactions, reclassifying those transactions, adjusting transactions, splitting transactions, and we'll conclude with processing recurring transactions. And let's just go ahead and open up Acumatica here. And so the primary or the bulk of our work will be handled here today in the finance workspace, where the majority, or excuse me, not majority, but all of the forms and reports that are necessary uh, are housed. Okay. And so the first topic, of course, we'll be talking about is managing control accounts. And so before we dive into the tutorial portion of that, we'll talk about the fact that, how, well, in the tutorial part, we'll not only talk about, but show you how control accounts are defined in Acumatica. And also, we'll take a look at how the system restricts the use of control accounts. And so the functionality of control accounts is available in Acumatica by default. And it is highly recommended that, control accounts be configured for the general ledger and all of the applicable sub ledgers. But keep in mind, it is still possible that you can configure no general ledger accounts as control accounts. And of course, in this case, when a non-control account is selected in the box, the system, when a non-control account is selected in the box where the system expects a control account for that subledger to be selected, a warning will be displayed, and that warning will simply say, and we'll take a look at the warning, but the warning will say um, that it is recommended that you use a control account, although you can still use that account that you're using to post to, but it is recommended that you use a control account. And so let's just go ahead and dive in. So to view the system and how Acumatica defines control accounts, first thing we would do is go to the chart of accounts. And in the finance workspace under profiles, you'll find chart of accounts. And here along the top here, you see control account module. And this account, 11,000, is the control account for accounts receivable. And if you have these subledgers such as inventory, you'll have a separate control account for inventory. And in this case, we'll take a look at the control account for accounts payable, which is 2000, the 2000 account. And also keep in mind that we talked about that although it's highly recommended that you use control accounts, but there still is a possibility that you can post directly to a control account. And if you see here under the allow manual entry checkbox, and you see what that says, a checkbox that indicates that users can post transactions directly to the control account. And if you wanted, of course, you can dig more and see what the go deeper into it. And for the sake of this training, we've selected accounts payable, and you can deselect it at any point. These don't come all selected. I selected this box once again for this training. So we could take a look at what the system does when we attempt to post directly to a control account. And so in this case, we have the allow manual entry box selected. Let's save that. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the effects on the system when we attempt to use documents or forms to select control accounts. So the first one we'll take a look at is going to be, and let's just swing back and take a look at the 11,000 account, which is the accounts receivable control account. You see we do not have the allow manual entry checkbox selected. So to test that, we're going to go to the receivables workspace and we'll attempt to create a new invoice. And so we'll select new. Let's go ahead and select the customer. And in description, let's put test. Come down to the details tab and let's add a row. And let's order. They're going to purchase advertising, let's say. And let's add quantity, unit price. And you see the system by default into the account box defaults the 40,000 account, which is the sales revenue general ledger account. But let's take a look and see if we attempted to use 11,000, which is the accounts receivable control account. And so there we have it. And you see the system there immediately turns the account in all red with the red circle and gives us the message that this account is a control account for accounts receivable and that posting to it is prohibited. So please select a control account. Okay. And so we took a look at attempting to post to a control account, in this case, the accounts receivable account, and we see the message that the system gives us. And let's just attempt to, even though it gives us this message, hey, let's just keep pushing forward. So someone just, hey, I don't know why that's red, but no problem, and attempts to save it. The system then sends back an error that lets us know once again the exact same thing, and it will not allow you to save this form and or release the form. So let's just do away with this form. We don't need it. And so now let's just go ahead and take a look at attempting to post to a bill using the accounts payable control account that we selected allow manual entry to. So from the payables workspace, we'll open a new bill. Select the customer. Test. Let's come down here, add a line. We're going to say test. The bill is $500. The system, of course, by default adds the cost of goods sold account. And here we're going to use the accounts payable account. So we see, similar to the accounts attempted to use the accounts receivable account, the system does flag a error message. It does not give us, the numbers aren't red, but it does not give us a red circle with an X. And let's take a look at this message. And it says that this account is a control account for accounts payable. And although posting to this account is allowed, so the system will allow us to use this account and post to it. But it also recommends that you select another non-control account. Okay. So once again, we could continue on and continue posting to this account. But later on down the line, when you're doing reconciliation, there's a good chance that you're going to find some errors because someone posted incorrectly to this account. Um, and so in this case, by using control accounts, the system giving you this error or this warning message helps alleviate that pain, so to speak. So we took a look at that. Let's go ahead and dump this. We don't need it. And so next we'll review the defaulted or the accounts in the general ledger accounts that are defaulted to a customer. Uh, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And let's go ahead into our receivables workspace. We're going to open the customer's form. We're going to open a new record. And we want to take a look at, and if you see here, by customer class, the customers that are by default. So basically, the general ledger accounts have been pre-configured in Acumatica when the system was implemented. So in this case, let's select Allen's Bakery. We're going to go down to the general ledger accounts. And so we see, like I said, by default, once we selected the customer, or if we set up a new customer, the system will automatically default these accounts. And in this case, the defaulted AR account is our accounts receivable control account. And we saw that on the general ledger. And so here, let's take a look and see what happens if we attempt to, in this case, use a sub account, right? And the system gives us a message, and we'll take a look at what that says. It lets us know this is not a control account. Okay, so please select an account configured as a control account for accounts receivable. So it's letting us know that this account is not suitable. Uh, and let's take a look, because I know we're looking at a sub account and you're saying, well, what if you use another control account? Let's take a look at that. In that case, we'll use a control account of 20,000, which is the accounts payable control account. And let's take a look at that error message where the account 20,000 is a control account for accounts payable. So go ahead and please select an account configured as a control account for accounts receivable. So you take a look at, the system and review these are the accounts that are specified by default, and taking a look at what happens when we attempt to use different accounts other than control accounts and the error messages that are displayed. So let's go ahead and change this back to its correct state of the accounts receivable. Let's go ahead and save that. And let's go ahead and close that out. And so far we've covered the managing control accounts portion of the demonstration. And what we've went over so far, we reviewed the control accounts configured in the system and allowed manual entry for one of the accounts. In this case, we selected the allow manual entry checkbox for the accounts payable control account. We then reviewed how the system treats a control account when it's specified for the document when manual entry to this control account is prohibited. We took a look at that in attempting to create accounts receivable document and use the accounts receivable control account as um, the accounts receivable control account in the invoice line, and the system then returned a message that that we were prohibited from making that adjustment. We then reviewed how the system treats a control account that's specified for a document when manual entry to this control account is allowed. And we did that by attempting to create a new bill, and then we added the 20,000, the account 20,000, which is the payables control account. And we took a look at the system warning that informed us that we could indeed post to the account, but the system uh, recommended that we use a non-control account other than the one that we had selected. We then reviewed the general ledger accounts for uh, specific customers, in this case, defaulted customers. We took a look at the general account tab and we saw the accounts that were defaulted uh, to those customers. Last, we reviewed the system behavior when we attempted to add a non-control account uh, and a control account in the as the accounts receivable account for the customer. We took a look at the error messages that the system returned when we attempted to use both of those. Uh, when I say both of those, I mean we attempted to use the non-control account, which was the AR accrual account, and then we also attempted to use the accounts payable control account, and the system also returned the error uh, in that case. And so with that being said, let's just continue to move. And the next topic we'll go over will be processing transactions. And let's just open Acumatica and return to our finance workspace. And in processing transactions, we'll go over three key topics. One, the first will be how to create a general ledger batch. The second will be how to release and post that created batch. And lastly, we'll review the statuses of the batch and after we released and posted it. And so before we dive into actually demonstrating, I will say this, that batches are very rarely entered manually in Acumatica. And that's usually because you work with documents such as invoices and bills and sales orders and things of that nature, in which case Acumatica will automatically generate the appropriate general ledger batches. But however, there are times that you will need to enter transactions manually directly into the general ledger. And so with that being said, a scenario here, we want to enter a general ledger batch to record salaries and wages for our employees in the amount of $12,600. And we're going to do that for the March 23 financial period. Okay. And so in order to do that, excuse me, we're going to come and from and within the finance workspace, the journal transactions form, you'll open a new form. And once the form is open, of course, we're going to populate the summary area. So in this case, we're going to say transaction date, and this is for March rent. So we're going to say last day of March. Acumatica, you see the system automatically populates the post period. Uh, that's simultaneous to the transaction ID. Uh, in this case, this is the branch we want, but you would definitely always specify the branch as well as the ledger. You should always specify, in this case, actual is what it defaults to. And so we'll put J salaries and wages, March 23. Spelling matters. There we go. And so then we'll come down and add a line. 99% of the time, the account you're attempting to post to. If you don't, of course, you can always, look it up through universal search or whatever. In this case, let's look up rent, because we're looking for our rent or lease expense account. And in this case, we're going to debit it for the amount. So 12,600 for the March. We're going to then add a new row for the other side of our transaction. And in this case, it's going to affect our cash. So we're going to look up our checking account. There we go. And you see there, Acumatica automatically populates the other side of the transaction. And so we review it. Everything is in order. And so at this point, we save it. You see status is on hold. Uh, you remove the hold. And so now it's in the balance status. And this is usually at the point when the separation of duties is, the clerk or whoever it may be creates the journal entry and then passes this up the chain to, the senior person, the more senior person that would then uh, review the work that was done to make sure the correct accounts and everything were affected. And at that point, this is where you would release and post the general ledger batch. So with that being said, to post and release, you just simply from the toolbar select release. The system shows you with the green check mark that the operation has completed and successfully. Okay, and you also see that the status has changed from balance to posted, letting us know that this transaction has officially posted in the general ledger and these accounts have been affected by these amounts. Okay. And so now if we want to see the batch details, uh, we can definitely do that by report. And the way you do that is at the toolbar here. This is called the more menu, those three dots. You'll select them under reports, batch register details report. The system opens the general ledger register detail report. And here, we definitely can view all of the details of the transaction uh, that we just created. Once again, we see the accounts that are affected, the description, the amounts of the debits and credits, and also we have the batch number. And at this point, if we wanted to drill back into it, we could take a look at the original general ledger transaction. Okay. And so with that being said, we've come through, we've gone through the portion on process and transactions. We took a look at, we actually went over three key things, and they were how we created a general ledger batch. We then released and posted the general ledger batch, and then we ran the GL register detail report, and we reviewed the batch details. Okay. And so we'll keep moving here. And the next portion we'll go over is reversing transactions. Okay. And so let's back to Acumatica and our finance workspace and reversing transactions. And in most cases, you reverse a batch if some of the details of that batch were entered incorrectly and the batch has been released. So what does that mean? Of course, if it's still on hold or balance status, there's no need to reverse it. You can just simply make any adjustments to it or delete it or whatever. But once the batch has been released, uh, and then this is one of the opportunities you can reverse the transaction. And so we realize, or we say we realize, we'll take a look at this. We posted the January rent incorrectly, and we want to reverse the transaction that was originally posted. So in order to do that, of course, we first need to find the transaction. And so in order to find well, there's a number of ways to find transactions, but the way we'll do it very quickly is from the finance workspace. We're going to go to the journal transactions form, and this is where every journal transaction in the system is housed. You see there are 37 pages, which is over 850 records. But we want to narrow our search very quickly. And in this case, we will go by transaction date and let's say equal to, and let's try, and that might not work. And so since we're here, we'll just go ahead and reverse this transaction. And so this was a test transaction that we set up prior to, and I know we said ran, but um, the nature of the tutorial is to show you how to reverse a transaction. So we'll select this transaction. The reason we selected this transaction because it has been posted, and we talked about that. In order to reverse a transaction, it has to be released. So in this case, we've, this is the transaction we're going to reverse. So to do that, we open the original transaction on the toolbar, more menu, select that. Under corrections, we will select reverse. And if you see, it happened very quickly, but the system automatically opened a reversing batch. You see the accounts are the same accounts that were affected in the original transaction, uh, but a reversing batch to reverse the original batch. Up in the summary area, you can see here the original batch number. So this is the general ledger link to the original batch. And let's go ahead and click it. And you see that's the original transaction, and we'll simply reverse these amounts. And there you see the system has the reversing transaction open. So at this case, excuse me, in this case, of course, we reviewed it. And you see here to let you know that this is a reversing transaction. In the reversing transaction checkbox in the summary area, it has been checked. This is not an auto reversing. This is a reversing. And we'll go over auto reversing our recurring transactions later in this demonstration. But just showing you, letting you know this is a reversing entry. Uh, and here is the original batch number. So with that being said, we reviewed this transaction. Everything is correct. We'll go ahead, remove the hold. And you see the status is now in balance so that we know we can release it. So let's go ahead and release it. The system lets us know that the operation was completed successfully. And there you have it. Status has changed to posted. We have now, this transaction has now affected the general ledger and these accounts by these amounts. And so now let's go ahead and review the account balance and the posted transactions on the account summary form. And so go back to our finance workspace. Uh, Under inquiries, let's go to account summary. And so, of course, you specify the company and the branch ledger. In this case, we want to look at period for January. Or was it February? Oh, let's just go back to it. And so then we can come back. Let's clear the filter here. I'm looking for this. Oh, wow. Oh, account details. I'm like, wait a minute. Come back to me. And that is not what I'm looking for. Let's go back to account summary. And I'm sorry, I got a little sidetrack there. But let's come back. So we are going to review. So we go to our, and in this case, uh, let's take a look here. And there we have it. The journal entry we were looking for. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. But in the accounts detail, account summary, uh, takes a look at the original journal entry in the link. Okay. And so let's just jump back in and talk about where we are, where we and what we've went over so far. So we just covered reversing transactions. We found the batch that needed to be reversed by using a quick filter on the journal transactions form. We then reversed the batch and reviewed the updated account balance on the account summary form, and we viewed the posted transaction on the account detail form. And so next we'll move into reclassifying transactions. And of course, you reclassify transactions when you post it to the wrong account, wrong sub account, branch, or division. And so in this case, we're going to, um, we've noticed that one of our, uh, something for desk repair. So we had a chair repair, one of our desk chairs repaired, and we mistakenly booked it to office expense when it should have been booked to the repairs account. So we'll go through the process of reclassifying that transaction. And of course, in that case, we first have to find the transaction. So in this case, from the finance workspace, we'll go to transactions uh, or account form. So let's go ahead and open this. We'll specify the branch, the ledger, the period, and yeah, we're gonna give ourselves a wide search parameter. So let's say from March 22 to this year. We know it affected the office expense account. So this is the account we'd like to search. And let's run our report. And so that's what we're looking for here. This is the desk chair repair. And so we've quickly found the transaction. And so directly from the transactions for account form, we can drill into this transaction. This opens the original journal transaction. And so we see here that this was posted, all the information. And what we need to do here is reclassify the transaction because once again, the totals and everything were correct. But this just should not have affected office expense. This should have been booked to repairs account. So in order to reclassify the transaction on the form toolbar, we'll select the More menu under Corrections, select Reclassify. There you have the system then opens the Reclassify Transactions form. And so here we'll just double click into this account and we're going to change it to repairs. There we have it. And then in order to save, you will press Control Enter. And so you see, once we press Control Enter, the system automatically selected the new transaction or the reclassification transaction. And then from there, we'll select Process. Here we have a Process and dialog box. And so we've now reclassified the transaction. So now we need to release the reclassification batch. And so in order to do that, we'll select the right here from the Process and dialog box, select the Process tab. We'll select the link directly to this batch. And it then opens this journal transaction. And you can see here that the transaction is on hold. And so we must remove the hold. We specify everything is correct. Let's remove the hold. Status comes to balance. We'll go ahead. Release. And there you have it. Type reclassification. System has processed it. Status is posted. And so now let's go ahead and close this out and let's review the details of account number 62400, or in this case, our office supplies account. So to do that, let's go to the account details form. And let's select the account. And actually, let's get our periods correct. And there we have it. And you see the warning dialog to the left that lets us know that this line, this transaction has been reclassified. So here is of course, new transaction here. And there you have it, reclassifying a transaction. And so during that portion of the tutorial, we went over reclassifying transactions. Within that, we found the transaction that we needed to be reclassified, and we did that by running the transactions for account report. We reclassify the transaction by changing the account to which the amount was posted, and then release the reclassification batch. And then lastly, we review the details of the original batch and the reclassification batch on the account's detail form. And so with that being said, we'll move into our next topic, which is adjusting transactions. Just have a drink of water here, excuse me. And one of our main goals here in adjusting transactions is um, we will talk about how to create an auto reversing batch in the system. And so previously we, of course, we're talking about reversing batches, and we were looking at the reversing batch checkbox, and we alluded to the fact that there was also a checkbox that had auto reversing as a selection. And so now we're at that portion of the demonstration. And so here we are, just a quick idea of some times to create an auto reversing batch. And that is you need to post a batch in the current period and reverse it on the first day of the preceding. Uh, financial period. And so mostly, I guess what I'm trying to say is mostly in the fact of accruals, right? So at the end of a month, when you're closing a period, you're accruing for salaries or bills or receivables, and so you can close out the books. But you would like for those transactions to auto reverse on the first day of the following financial period. So here is a way in Acumatica that you can accomplish this goal. Okay. And so the scenario here is we are closing out our January 2023 financial period, and we realize we still don't have, or we can't locate the electric, excuse me, the electricity bill. So we're going to create an auto reversing batch for the amount of the electricity bill because it's very frequent. We kind of know or kind of have a good guess of what it is. And so therefore this batch will be posted on January 31, and then the system will reverse it at the beginning of the following period. So in that case, February 1st, or the first day of the next financial period. And so in order to do that, let's go to our finance workspace. We first need to go to journal transactions and create a new document. And this document is created because it will be used as a template later in this process. So with that being said, we'll fill out the document. So transaction date in this case, because this is month end, we're going to say January 31, 2023. Host period auto selected. Um, we'll call this January 23 AP accrual. Okay. And then in the summary area, we'll select the auto reversing checkbox. Okay. And so let's come down here. Let's add a row. And branch is specified. The account in this case will specify, but you would always specify the account. In this case, for us, this account will be utilities. Okay. The debit amount in this case is going to be $2,320. And then we'll add a row. And specify the account in this case. Other accrued expenses. I guess we'll just call it that too. Being consistent. Be consistent. Accrued expenses. Okay. And so, of course, the system automatically populated the other side of this transaction here. So now we have our template. This is basically uh, what we expect the bill to be, and this is the transaction we're going to post, and we want this transaction to auto reverse on the first day of the following financial period. So at this point, we will save it and leave it in the on hold status. Um, and matter of fact, we won't leave it on the on hold status. I'm sorry. Uh, got a little sidetracked. So here we go. We'll leave it in the balance status. Okay. And let's go ahead and release it. And so there you see it. The original transaction is posted, but here in the summary area of the form, here is the link to the reversing batch, and the GL reversing batches form opens, and it shows us period 223, right? Because we just posted our original batch in period 123, but in period 223, uh, the reversing batch that will take place. And see, there you go. Transaction date is going to be 2/1/23, and show the reversal of our original batch. And so there you have it. And so now let's go ahead and review the account balances and the posted transactions. And the way we do that, let's go to the accounts details form. And let's set it up post period from January. Where do we go? There you are. January 23. And let's just say to January 23 and see what happens. January to February, excuse me, because we need to see the February transaction also, which is the reverse and batch. And let's just add that. And let's add the account 23/020. And there you have it. There we can click into the link for the batch for January. And then we can also click and view the transaction for February, which is the reversing transaction. So very straightforward in Acumatica, setting up adjusting transactions, auto adjusting in that case. And so quick recap where we are. We created and released an auto reversing batch that will be reversed automatically at the beginning of the next financial period. We then reviewed the account details form and reviewed the balances of the accounts affected in the auto reversing, in the auto reversing batch. And so with that being said, we'll move into the next portion of the demonstration, which is splitting transactions. And so in this case, from our finance workspace, where we've been working is where we'll be. And so To split a transaction has, usually would do this is if the transaction was posted to, one of the accounts was correct, but it should have been posted also to another account. Should have been a compound journal entry, so to speak. Excuse me, to one or more accounts. And so in this case, that excuse me, it usually happens, part of the amount is posted to the wrong account, so on and so forth. And so in this case, the scenario is in February, actually February 13th, we know that a general ledger batch for $212 was wrongly posted to the other expenses account. Only $32 of that should have been posted to the expense account, and the remaining balance should have been posted to two other accounts, two other expense accounts that should have been accounted for in this transaction, excuse me, which was travel expense and advertising expense. So let's go ahead and take a look at how to split a transaction in Acumatica. Okay, and so first we would need to prepare for splitting the transaction. So we need to find it. So let's go ahead and locate the transaction. So in this case, we'll go to the accounts details form where that's what it is. Let's clear that. And so in this case, we want to see other expenses account. And there is the transaction. At the bottom, advertising campaign, transaction date. And so let's just go ahead from here and link into the original transaction. Actually, let's just go ahead and close this out. It's a quicker way. Let's go ahead and we'll click the link next to this transaction. And at the top here, from the accounts detail form, we'll select reclassify. And you see the system then opens the reclassify transactions form. So at this point, you see along the toolbar, it gives us a number of options. And so with that being said, we are here to split. And so we'll split this transaction. Uh, we need it to be split over two other accounts. So in this case, we're looking for advertising expense. And so this is one account we want. And this account, the new amount should be $100. And then let's split it again. And we have one more account that is affected, and that's going to be travel. Let's find that one. And the amount for this is going to be $80. And so you see there we have it. We've split the transaction into from the debit amount of 212, we split it along three transactions. And this is the way the original compounding entry should have looked. So the $32 is correctly been booked to other expenses, and the remaining accounts have their totals correctly booked. And so once we've reviewed it, take a look at it, we make sure all our totals are correct. You see along here, along the left, each transaction has been selected. We know this is what we want. So then we come to our toolbar and we'll select process. and the system processes it. And let's go ahead and take a look at open the processing tool tab bar, and we're going to let's just take a look at the batch, and you see the new journal transaction shifting the totals from other expenses to advertising and travel. And so from there, we'll remove the hold and release this transaction. And let's go ahead and close this out. And so there you have it. We officially split a transaction. So let's just recap on where we are. So we just went over a portion of splitting a transaction, although we went through it fairly quick. In most cases, um, Acumatica is very user friendly and easy to, very user friendly, very intuitive, so to speak. And so, with that being said, during splitting transactions, we found very quickly that the transaction that had to be split. We did that by using the accounts details form. And then right from that form, we click reclassify to start splitting the selected transaction. From there, we split the transaction into several new entries, split the original transaction amount between these new entries. We took a look at the new journal transaction, shifting the balances from other expenses to their correct accounts. In that case, was travel and advertising expense. And then we reviewed the original transactions and its amount after the split. Okay. And so, with that being said, we'll move into the final portion of our demonstration, and that's going to be processing recurring transactions. And the topic that we attempt to cover here in processing current excuse me, processing recurring transactions is we will go through how to create schedules for a recurring transaction, and uh, we'll also generate the recurring transaction. And so recurring transactions, when should you create them? When have I used them? You should usually create these recurring transactions for things that repeat regularly, such as loan payments, rent payments, different things like that that repeat regularly and have the same amount every transaction. And so in that case, we'll suppose our company pays rent every month and we receive the rent bill for each month at the beginning of the next month. So therefore, we usually record an accrual for rent expenses every month. So we've decided to create a recurring batch to schedule the accrual of rent expenses for every month of 2023. And we will also need to generate the batch for the 2023 for the January 23 financial period. And so to create the recurring batch, the first thing we're going to do is go to the journal transactions form. We're going to open a new journal transactions form, and we're going to set it up January 31, 23. We're going to call this, let's say, rent accrual. Um, yeah, monthly rent accrual. Okay. And then we're going to save it. And so we've created what is essentially going to be our template. Okay. And so let's just go ahead now and add a row. In this case, this is for rent. So let's 62900, and this debit amount is 4,700. Let's add another row. And our other account is going to be accrued expenses, and system automatically updates it. So let's go ahead and save that. And so now we have our template. So now we'll go ahead and to create a schedule for this batch. So now we have our template set, and how we create the schedule is on the on the table tool, on the table toolbar under the more menu. Uh, well, gotta remove the whole. So yeah, you gotta remove the whole. But before you release it, once it's in the balance status, so we created our template, and we bring it to the balance status. Then go to on the toolbar to the more menu. Under other, we're going to select add to schedule. So now the system opens the recurring transactions form and figure, a schedule to repeat the batch 12 times. And that's going to happen on the last day of each month. Okay. And so the first thing we need to do is specify the start date. And in this case, it's going to be January 31. Um, Now you can set up a recurring, transaction if this is something that happens at this point in perpetuity, right? But in this case, we have an execution date, so we're going to select execution limits, and in this case, we're going to select 12. We're going to call this monthly rent accrual. And under schedule type, we're going to, because this will occur monthly, we're going to select monthly every 1 month on the 31st day, on day 31. Okay. And so there we have it. And so now we'll save it. And I just wanted to walk you through it, even though we have one down here that we've created. But for the sake of this training, just wanted to walk you through it here. And so there we have it. So now we've created a schedule for our batch. And so now we'll look at how to run the schedule and generate the batch. And so to run the schedule and generate a batch, the first thing, let's go to finance. So open this thing up, generate recurring transactions. Okay. And it shows for us, there we have it, but execution date. And let's just go to our execution date. And we see what we have here. So it has a schedule listed for us, the schedule we created. You see the execution limit times 12. How many times has it executed? 0. So it hasn't been started yet. Okay. And so let's go ahead and we'll select it after we, review it, make sure everything is correct. Stop after number of executions, 1. And so we're all good. And so then we select on the toolbar, run, system opens the processing dialog box. Let's take a look at what was processed there. It tells us the record has been processed, lets us know there. And let's just go ahead and review it. And so it gives us a view of the recurring transactions form that we set up, all of the parameters that we set up, when this will execute, how many times it will execute, what start date, and you see last executed. So once we hit run, it was executed on January 21, 31, 23, and the next execution date, you see there will be uh, the end of the next month, which will be February, and it will proceed until it gets to the actual execution limit of 12. Okay. So let's go ahead and close this out. Let's go to the release transactions form, and we'll select. So we want to select our transaction that we created, and let's go ahead and release it on the toolbar. Let's take a look at what was processed there. Shows us a general ledger batch. And there we have our batch that was posted as of December 31 for our financials. We see the rent was affected, accrued expenses. And so we see that month end transaction automatically uh, generated. So let's go ahead and close that out. Okay. So we just went over processing recurrent transactions. We talked about how to create a batch with the balance status that will be used as a template for the recurring batch. We then created a schedule for the recurring batch, and within that, specifying when and how many times the batch should be posted. In this case, we set it up for 12 consecutive times or execution times, and then we ran the schedule and generated and released a recurring batch. And so with that being said, we've covered all 7 topics in our original agenda. So we're very close to the end here. But just a quick recap on what we've covered in entirety today. We've covered managing control accounts. And then we took a look at processing transactions, reversing transactions, reclassifying transactions, adjusting and splitting transactions, and we concluded with the setup and processing of a recurring transaction in Acumatica. And so with that being said, we've come to the end of our tutorial. Once again, my name is Abdul McWhorter. I'm a consultant here at GRF CPAs and Advisors. Thank you for your time and enjoy the remainder of your day.